Good morning. I call this meeting of the Public Accounts Committee to order. This morning we have the Office of Service Nova Scotia with us to discuss service modernization and access centres. I'd like to remind everyone to make sure your phones are on silent. We'll start with introductions, beginning with Mr. McKay.
Good morning and welcome. Hugh McKay, MLA for Chester St. Margaret's.
Good morning. Brendan McGuire, Halifax Atlantic.
Good morning. Rafa Di Costanzo, MLA Clayton Park West, and I'm here for Ben Jessom.
Good morning. MLA Suzanne Lonis-Croft, Lunenburg.
Gordon Wilson, MLA for Clare Digby.
Good morning. Welcome. My name is Tim Houston. I'm the MLA for Pictou East.
Good morning. Dave Wilson, MLA for Sackville-Cobequid.
I'm Lisa Roberts, the MLA for Halifax Needham.
Alan McMaster, MLA for Inverness, and your chair. We also have the Auditor General's office with us this morning, Mr. Spicer.
Terry Spicer, Deputy Auditor General.
And we'll begin with our guests, introducing them, starting with Mr. Benoit.
Paul Benoit, Service Nova Scotia.
Gillian Latham, Service Nova Scotia.
Joanne Munro, CEO for Service Nova Scotia.
Natasha Clarke with Service Nova Scotia.
Darlene O'Neill, Finance and Treasury Board, serving Service Nova Scotia.
Ms. Munro, you can start with opening comments.
Thank you. Good morning, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. It's a pleasure to join you today to talk about our Access Nova Scotia centres and service modernization. Before continuing, I'd like to talk a little bit further about my colleagues. Gillian Latham is the Executive Director for In-Person Service Delivery. Paul Benoit is the Director of Operations and Client Support within the In-Person Service Delivery. Natasha Clarke is the Executive Director for Digital Services, and Darlene O'Neill, our Director of Finance. Together, we'll work to answer your questions. If there's any information we don't have, we commit to provide it to you as soon as possible. Mr. Chairman, Service Nova Scotia is in a unique position when you compare us to other government departments. Not only are we responsible for and provide a diverse suite of programs and services to Nova Scotians, we're also a service provider. We have a critical role helping other government departments provide services to their clients. As a result, we touch every citizen and business in the province. Our mission is to design and deliver programs and services to meet our clients' needs through a culture of excellence. Our vision is to be a recognized leader in service excellence and public protection that delivers trusted, accessible, modern programs and contributes to Nova Scotia as a safe and desirable place to live, work, and do business. We want to make services more convenient and efficient. The status quo is not an option. We recognize client service across government is important to Nova Scotians, and we've got the right team in place at Service Nova Scotia to deliver the level of service they expect and deserve. In April 2016, we announced our plan to transform how we work to be more client-focused and efficient so we can improve service to Nova Scotians and modernize the programs and services we deliver. Today is a welcomed opportunity to share our successes to date. To set the stage for the breadth of work that we do, we're responsible for more than 40 pieces of legislation, ranging from the Marriage Act and the Land Registry Act to the Consumer Protection Act. We issue birth, death, and marriage certificates. Our compliance officers work with the RCMP to reduce contraband tobacco. We administer the Popular Heating Assistance Rebate Program and respond to concerns from landlords and tenants protected through the Residential Tenancies Act. We also manage 3 of the 4 registries, Joint Stock Companies, Land, and Vital Statistics, and we work with our partner department, Department of Transportation and Infrastructure Renewal, to manage the Registry of Motor Vehicles. We also have a critical role in moving Nova Scotia to a digital government. There are 13 access centres and 7 Registry of Motor Vehicle offices, 5 Land Registry offices across the province with more than 320 employees. This past year, staff served close to 1 million clients at our access centres and Registry of Motor Vehicles. Staff working at the Government Contact Centre answered 350,000 calls. There were more than 37,000 birth, marriage, and death certificates issued through Vital Statistics, and there were 8,600 new business registrations. Mr. Chairman, the team at Service Nova Scotia is constantly looking to see how they can become more client-focused and efficient to improve service to Nova Scotians. Staff are committed to service excellence across all channels, improving our programs while being fiscally responsible. They're fully engaged, creative, innovative, and collaborative. In fact, in the recent employee engagement survey, 82% of staff working in the in-person services division said that they were inspired to give their very best. Service Nova Scotia broadly, we hit 80% of employees saying that. This is a significant improvement from the engagement survey completed in 2015. I'd like to take the opportunity to thank all our Access employees for what they do each and every day. Thanks to their passion and commitment, they are consistently meeting our formal service standard to serve 80% of our clients within 20 minutes or less. Here are a few examples of things we've done to meet our service target and improve the overall client experience within our Access centres. We expanded knowledge test hours, increasing the hours to write learners tests, 6,500 additional hours added across the network. We arranged for seasonal staff to help with peak volumes in the spring and summer, leading to more consistent wait times throughout the year. We added an accessibility service line to the ticketing system we use in our Access centres. We introduced name badges for employees, reflecting that we are a professional service organization. We increased the availability of staff to serve clients by 3,800 hours across the network by implementing an improved cash balancing process. We've increased the availability of staff to serve clients by 26 hours across the network by moving from pre-printed inventory control numbers to print-on-demand inventory control numbers for vehicle permits. And we've supplied all our Access centres with tablets for language translation, and there is more. In support of our mandate to deliver service excellence to our clients, we introduced a client experience commitment this fall. It's our team's commitment to put the client at the forefront of everything we do. The key words are respectful, fair, responsive, and inclusive. We're working to continually improve our performance. We want to be innovative and client-focused, all the while maintaining a strong focus on employee engagement and well-being. With the remaining time I have for my opening remarks, I'd also like to talk about our work to modernize the services we offer. As we announced some time ago, we are modernizing the registries to allow us to fulfill our commitment to become a leader in service and program modernization. The 4 registries Joint Stock, Land, Vital Statistics, and RMV, conduct about 2.6 million transactions per year and bring in more than $150 million annually in revenue. New IT systems are required. We are starting with the Registry of Joint Stock Companies. It's the oldest of the system applications, approximately 20 years old. It's outdated and difficult to maintain. Imagine if you're still using the computer software you used 20 years ago. I'm very pleased to advise that we will soon be in a position to announce the vendor who was successful in the competitive selection process. Some of the client benefits will be more transactions will be able to be submitted online 24/7, no need to mail in or deliver in person. Smart forms and online help will let the user know if anything's missing before they submit, thus avoiding further back and forth delays. And the new registry system, I know, will be providing a lot more client benefit when implemented. We're very excited about this initiative and what it means to businesses across the province. For the motor vehicles, Vital Statistics, and land registries, we're developing a multi-year plan to modernize these registries. We will do this with staff involvement and engaged stakeholders. We will continue to foster an enhanced client service culture. Modernizing the 4 registries is expected to take another 5 to 6 years to complete, with benefits being fully realized within 8 to 10. Mr. Chairman, Service Nova Scotia is recognized as a leader in helping the province become a digital government. This means we will work toward a province where government services are available digitally and designed to meet citizen and business needs. Our Digital Services Division is working with partners across government to make things simpler and easier, allowing clients to interact on their own terms and reducing unnecessary duplication of effort. Digital services improve the efficiency of government in processing transactions. This reduces the administrative burden on program areas, allowing staff to focus on the more important business of reviewing and adjudicating applications and transactions. We are transforming the way government services are delivered through client-centric digital service options that provide easy and convenient access to many programs and services. The key to success is working with people who use and need the services, the actual users, throughout the entire process. The result is providing a service people will actually prefer to use. Mr. Chairman, our commitment to client service excellence anchors all that we do at Service Nova Scotia. The strength of our talented, professional, and innovative team is key to our success. We are excited about the work we're doing and the positive impact we are making. I'm pleased now to welcome your questions.
Thank you, Ms. Munro. We'll start with Mr. Houston of the PC Caucus for 20 minutes.
Thank you for the introductory comments. I will say that I now would prefer to go to the Registry of Motor Vehicles than the dentist, so that's a good thing. It used to be the other way around. But in terms of the modernization of the IT systems, there was talk not that long ago about outsourcing, privatizing all of those databases and all of that system. Is that still an option that the government's looking at?
Oh yes. Thank you, member, for the question, Mr. Chair. April 2016 was the date that the month that we announced the decision not to go down the route of alternate service delivery, that it was called, and that the government made the decision to drive forward with a government-led transformation. And so that work is well underway. And as I said in my opening remarks, the registry's joint stocks was the first registry to actually be focused on. So most energy has been there because of the dated nature of that registry. And so not only is it an IT system, which we hope to be in a position very soon to announce that process, where the RFP was actually issued December 2000, last December. And so we're imminent there. But the transformation incorporates process improvement, program modernization, a culture, data governance, as well as the IT system itself. So these transformations are multidimensional and complex, and we actually work with internal services, ourselves as program owner, ourselves as the service delivery arm, and as well as Department of Justice and stakeholders. And so there's complex processes. So we are well under the way, and we actually have work started as well on registry motor vehicles with our partner department, TIR, and Vital Stats and Land. But our first one off the mark is the registry joint stocks. And so that work, yes, is well underway, and the team and the governance has put in place to move those forward.
So the government-led initiative is a multi-year initiative, obviously, yes. And is there a dollar amount on how much you think? I'm going to be specific on the IT portion. I know you don't want to. You're going to release a competitive bid soon on one of them, so you don't want to. I don't want to kind of prejudice that, but if you look at all the databases, how much do you expect it will cost?
Thank you for your question, Mr. Chair. I'd go back to the work that we did, which has all been very valuable to use as we parcel out each one of these registries and focus on the transformation for each, because they're independent. So going back to that work, we had targeted somewhere around 35 to 40 million for all 4 registries. And so as the work begins in earnest, it's about understanding what the market is and what the vendors come forward with our business problems and the solutions that we need. And through the procurement process, we'll see where that ends up.
So would these mostly be off the shelf type systems with some modification, or do they have to be built from scratch?
Thank you for the question, Mr. Chair. So we work very closely, obviously, with our IT expert in internal services. So we work with them to identify what the best technology solution might be as part of the transformation for the registries. But certainly technology has advanced. There's custom build, there's cloud, there's many, many things and that we have as part of the deliberation process. But again, I would defer to my colleagues in internal services to determine what's the best technology based on our architecture and requirements, business requirements.
Thank you. There was some consolidation of the land registration offices over the last few years. I'm thinking specifically of the one that was in Pictou. So now Pictou County residents in that area of Nova Scotia have to go to, I think it's in Amherst now, and that's, have you heard much feedback on that? Is it working or is it not working, or what's your sense of that?
Thank you for your question, member and Mr. Chair. So yes, that initiative a number of years ago consolidated 18 land registry offices down to 5 regional offices. And the business rationale and reason for that was 75% of land transactions are completed online and are submitted online, and 20% are sent in via mail. Or mail or courier, and 5% were walk-in traffic. And so the opportunity that presented ourselves was a model that really evolved with consumer demand or the demand of the business itself. So since that time, and I'll let my colleagues chime in as well, has been working very well. Yes, there's areas where people have the convenience of going into the land registry for that 5% is not comfortable, and we understand that. We are, as part of the land transformation, which would be, the last one on the list because it is the most modern, if you will. Yes, there needs to be upgrade. Would be something that we would be looking for a paid per use so that people could actually do it from their homes. But that's not available now with the system that we have. It's just too costly, and it would be throwaway if there's any work done on the land registry to allow that functionality. So on that front, we don't get a lot of complaints. There's certain pockets across the province that, genealogists and that kind of thing that would like to use it, but it's not our main user group. So I do not get complaints, a lot of complaints at all about the land registry. There is an inconvenience there, but I know that it's a stopgap until we get to the new system where a pay-per-use option for accessing the property online system will be available and will be a requirement. Maybe I could defer to my colleague, Ms. Latham, to just respond, since she manages the access in the land registry office staff.
Sure. Ms. Latham.
Thank you. Yeah, I would just add that going from 18 to 5 obviously was a significant effort, but in that, in the entire time since then, we have consistently met our service levels. We have certain turnaround targets, et cetera, to our clients, in particular the Nova Scotia Barristers Society, and we haven't missed a beat really in meeting our service levels to those clients. All 5 offices are fully staffed, fully functioning, and they're doing a fantastic job for our clients.
So is the 75 online, 25 mail, 5, that's what the stats were at the time? What do they look like now? Is there still 5% walk-in?
The work of the registry staff is to provide more and more services online. So I don't have the stat right now. I do believe it's still fairly close to 75 to 77 of online transaction. But again, in working with our registries team and digital services, there's more that we can do there to enhance, and those are really the key users, is the lawyers, and I'd like to add too is that the savings have been about $500,000 a year since we started in bottom line savings.
Yeah, is there any way for those people that like to walk in and probably live in an area of the province where they don't have internet? Could you set up a kiosk at one of the other kind of Service Nova Scotia offices where they could go in and do some online stuff?
Thank you for the question. In fact, we're looking at piloting it's really a terminal, and it's about training our staff within the access centres to be able to manage and support that service offering. At the time of the consolidation, and really over the last 2 years, we really have been focused on getting our core business in hand, which is the RMV and info services transactional work within the access centers. And so most recently, we thought to look at a pilot option to bring in a terminal computer into our Digby Access Center to see whether or not volumes warrant it, what's the capacity on staff, can they handle it, what technology issues might we have that we didn't think of. So we're looking to say this is a stopgap. We will fix it when the land registry system gets modernized, but at this point that's going to be a pilot to see does that make sense. So we'll see where that might go.
How did you pick Digby?
How did we pick Digby? We actually, that was been the one area where we've had, you know, conversations with MLA Wilson and the municipal office there, and Norman Hill, our executive director of registries, has been in contact with that group. And so there's been, you know, I'm not sure what the community is down there and what the need is on the genealogy side or the walk-in traffic, but that seems to be where we've heard most people coming in saying, is there anything we can do? Is there anything we can do? So of course we want to hear and listen. We haven't had complaints elsewhere, and so we'll try this. And really the Digby office is in good shape from a staffing perspective and volume and meeting at service levels. To introduce something new won't take them off their game.
Thank you. In terms of the, a lot of people in Nova Scotia have utility trailers. Utility trailers have to be registered once a year. That's different than vehicles now, which have moved to multi-years. Is there any thought about moving a utility trailer license away from once a year to some multi-year process?
Thank you very much for the question. The decision around frequency of licenses and fees is Department of Transportation and Infrastructure Renewal, so I don't wish to not answer the question, but I have no ability to make the decision. So we're their service delivery arm for that registry, and I would agree there could be some opportunity on frequency for the license plates.
Okay, I was just checking. Okay. In terms of the move to license driver's licenses with the facial recognition, now at some point in time when that goes live, I don't think it's live yet. Is it live yet? It is live yet. So when you get your license, it comes in the mail from Ontario, I guess, right? So it's for improved security reasons. Yeah. But I'm wondering, is there a security problem with the license that I have in my pocket? Like, what was the what's the push for that?
Thank you for the question, member and Mr. Chair. In fact, the we call it central issuance photo licensing. We've just completed the rollout of that across the province end of January. So we are now fully functional in all access centers, and that went extremely well. And clients are getting used to it. I mean, this will be over 5 years because people have a renewal process for the license over 5 years. So it's the start of it to come. So Mr. Benoit was very involved in the photo licensing ID because we did it in concert with our other 4 jurisdictions, New Brunswick, PEI, and Newfoundland. And it is to bring us into the security world with fraud out there. But I would say that we are not at risk, although there's enhancements that will allow us to do more things, I think, as well with the card. But if I could, I'd like to defer and have my colleague, Mr. Benoit, provide further detail on that particular program.
I guess what I'd ask, like, do I still need a passport? Like, are we kind of jacking up the licenses so much that we don't need anything else? Mr. Benoit?
Thank you for your question. Yes, you still would require a passport. So there's driver's licenses that are driver's licenses, and then there's driver's licenses in some jurisdictions that are called an enhanced driver's license. And those have the ability to cross borders, and it's really not about the security features on the driver's license itself, but the enrollment process is much like the enrollment process of a passport. So that's where the added security comes in for that type of license. Nova Scotia doesn't offer that type of license.
So what was the driving force then? If our drivers, if there's no real security threat with the license that we already were issuing, then why are we pushing to this new system?
Thank you for the question. The real driving force was the fact that the license in your pocket is based on 10-year-old security. So it is a 10-year-old license. The contract came to an end, so the 4 jurisdictions again went out to tender and wanted to meet the industry standards that were out there today that are used by 40 of the US states and all other Canadian provinces with the exception of Nunavut. That adds the ability by going to essential issuance to enhance the security features on the card to prevent counterfeiting, things like laser engraving that you can't do in an in-person environment. And also the use of facial recognition technology, its best use is within essential issuance process because that allows you to do the identity verification prior to issuing you a card.
But does the province take on some additional legal liability? And if a driver's license has a purpose, right? It's for driving. It gets used for other purposes, proof of age and stuff. But I think the more we kind of enhance it, don't we give the user, the people that are looking at it, kind of a false sense of security as to what it is? Aren't we just kind of taking on a little more with promoting it as more secure? I think I'm just trying to struggle with what reason do we need a more secure license?
Ms. Monroe.
Thank you for the question. I think when we look at our identity, which is identity generally across the country, is something that all jurisdictions are working with a digital identity as well. So driver's license is a foundational piece of identity. And in looking at where that world of identity is going and security requirements, we need to evolve because we need to stay ahead of, or try to stay ahead of, fraud. We do not know that there's any large issue, but when we know that we can work with our jurisdictions and go through a procurement process to further enhance our security, it was an opportunity that all 4 jurisdictions agreed was the right thing to do. And I would say we were behind in this space. And so this will actually bring us to a space for central issuance. And that card would be, and I'd look to my colleague, Ms. Clarke, foundational for further identity and transaction work on the go forward with a services card, and how do we build that strategy out. So I think it's a foundational piece, and from our perspective, it's an area that we needed to increase our security and access through the driver's license.
Do you have any sense how many kind of, let's call them fake driver's licenses are issued? When I was coming up, you used to go get your liquor license, and some people would get fake ones. They'd actually go in with somebody else's birth certificate and stuff. Is that happening with our driver's license as we sit here today?
Thank you for the question, Mr. Chair. We don't have the data on that because our system doesn't track that, nor do we have an ability to do that, but we will on the go forward, obviously, with the Jamulta system with our other jurisdictions. So we'll be able to actually detect.
Is it a concern that that's happening with the existing system?
I would think that it is a concern, but not one that has, come to the forefront in any great light.
So would it be a concern with the new system as well then? Because if we're holding up these new licenses as a higher standard, wouldn't it puts much more onus on your frontline worker to make sure if somebody goes in with false ID that they have everything.
Yeah, no, thank you for the question. I'll defer that to Mr. Benoit because in fact the system is much more secure and it takes away the stress and pressure of that on our front line.
Mr. Benoit.
Again, that would be the benefit of the facial recognition, so that's assisting staff in the verification of identity to ensure that we have greater success in ensuring that the card gets into the hand of the rightful license holder.
So if somebody took my, I'm in the system so they could see my old ID, I guess, my old picture, but if somebody were to take somebody's birth certificate and stuff, they could go and get this, but what would the system say? Would it flag that it's already been issued?
So what the system would do is if they took my picture for your record, the theory is my picture is somewhere on my record. So the system would scan from a mathematical perspective the calculations associated with facial recognition to find that same photo on a different file, and then that would lead our TIR partners within the program to do an investigation with humans.
Okay. You still have a few seconds left.
Is the system has the ability to put RFID chips in the licenses? Are we doing that? RFID chips.
Ms. Munro?
If I could defer to my colleague, Ms. Clarke.
Ms. Clarke.
Thank you for the question. Certainly the requirement has been put in place to enable that type of enhancement or feature in cards. The reason why we wanted to ensure that requirement was in place is part of our overall planning around digital identity. And government is in the identity business today. Whether we agree or not, our driver's license is considered a secondary, at least, if not a foundational identity document in terms of citizens' use. If I want to create a bank account, I typically show that at a bank. It's the first piece of ID that I'm typically showing to prove my identity. So government has an obligation to ensure that we are thinking about the protection of citizens' interests when they're interacting digitally. So this card and having those types of requirements in place. So it has the chip in it? It does not today, but the requirement.
I'm sorry to interrupt. I was letting it go beyond the time a little bit. We'll move to Ms. Roberts of the NDP Caucus.
Thank you very much. I represent very much a downtown urban constituency, and as such I was one of the people years ago that railed on social media when Access Nova Scotia moved out to Bayers Lake, which many of us feel is not very accessible. It's great to have a 20-minute wait time there, but of course you can't get there in 20 minutes from many places, and certainly if people are taking public transit, it is a very long journey. I'm wondering if those are concerns that you hear at the front line. I don't know if you're like regularly kind of surveying staff to hear what kind of feedback they get from clients, but I'd be interested to hear if those concerns are still being expressed.
Ms. Munro.
Thank you for your question, member and Mr. Chair. I'm glad you asked the question. In fact, just a little bit of history, I guess, when the tender went out back in 2010, initially they had the boundaries on the peninsula, and there was no bidders met the requirements of the bid, and so they went out a second time and extended the boundaries, and then through that procurement process, that was where the location was. It serves about 170,000 to 180,000 clients annually, and there's about 65 staff there. We have ongoing conversations with HRM about the business park and accessibility. And I will defer because I know Ms. Latham and Paul Benoit have been, a part of this ongoing conversation. Yes, there are complaints of clients having to get to Bayers Lake. Recently, we were part of the Halifax Connects for the first time, and we arranged through the Halifax Connects to actually with Halifax Transit to actually open up the shop on Sunday and bring a busload of people that needed their IDs that could not get there. As you know, the Halifax Connect is focused on an expo of low-income or marginalized individuals, and we were able to transact about 200 IDs at that time. So we understand how you get there and the bus-to-bus route. Yes, we do have complaints, but we also have likes on the other side where people say I don't have to go into the city. So it's both ways. But on that front, if I could lean on my colleague, Ms. Latham, to respond a little bit more detail, that'd be great.
Ms. Latham.
Thank you. Thank you for the question. Yeah, just to reiterate what Ms. Munro said, we have worked with HRM to try and do some things to make it more feasible for citizens who do need to travel from the peninsula out to Bears Lake. So, for example, we were able to work with them in getting a bus shelter built out there. The bus routes do go fairly close to where the access center is, so it's a fairly short distance. And in addition, although it is further for residents, of course, of the peninsula, there's a large group of citizens, of course, that live just as large, that live close to the Bears Lake facility. So the lease for that facility comes due in 2020, October 2020. At that time, we will revisit and go through the tendering and RFP process again, and certainly take into account all of those considerations.
Yeah. I appreciate that history, and I'm wondering if anyone on your team recalls sort of what the details were of the bid and of the RFP in 2010 that might have made it difficult for bids to come, not just from the peninsula, but from a more kind of connected, already built out, already connected to transit part of HRM. Because I mean, certainly, in connection to the recent decision to build an outpatient clinic out in Bears Lake, we pointed out, it's not just the peninsula, it could also be, close to a transit terminal, it could be at Cobequid, there are multiple kind of nodes where having not just services that are essential to pretty much every member of the public, but also places where people are going to go to work every day. Like, what do your staff do? They all, basically, if any of your staff come to work by bus, they had better be packing their lunch, because it would take your entire lunch hour to go to Montana's. And how does that make any sense in terms of economic development or just like quality of life for those people who are going to work every day? Anyhow, so I would be interested to know what was written into the RFP at the time that might have made it challenging for other bidders to come forward.
Ms. Munro.
Thank you for your question, Mr. Chair. I wasn't here when that happened. I would say that what you say, I get, and I would say that as we move forward with the new process, when it's time to go back to the street, we need to take those considerations in as part of our requirements. On that note, if I can, is there anything for you guys, Mr. Benoit, do you have anything further to add?
Mr. Benoit?
From my perspective, I suspect the biggest challenge might have been for people on the peninsula was the element of parking for clients and having a facility that could accommodate the parking needs of a client base such as ours. However, that's simply a guess. I don't know why there was no bids, but I suspect that might have been the most significant barrier to somebody being able to bid.
Interesting. Did you have, sorry, was there anything further to add? No.
Ms. Latham?
The only thing I will add, it's interesting you bring up the notion of being located, we're a central hub of transit, et cetera, and we've recently had some discussions with the new Executive Director of Accessibility about that very thing. So it's definitely an interesting concept, and all of these considerations will definitely be on our radar. And what we're going to be starting very soon with the expiry of 2020 will be, we're starting very soon in the planning process for Halifax Access.
Across the province, as part of the research package, there was just a map that shows where all the Access Nova Scotia centres are. How many of them are located, in relative proximity, say walking, how many of them are walkable? How many of them could your staff, for example, leave work on their lunch hour and get to a place to eat or shop or what have you, and return on their lunch hour without necessarily requiring a car?
Ms. Munro.
Thank you for your question. I've not, so I don't have that off the top of my head. I mean, I could go through each one because I visit every one of them.
Sure.
To let you know where that is. Yarmouth is in town, Digby's in town, Lawrencetown is in town, Middleton is in town, Shelburne is in town, Liverpool's in town, Bridgewater, little bit, in town, but a little bit on the peripheral. Halifax, Lower Sackville is in town on the strip. Kentville's in town. Windsor is in the municipal office. Oh, in the mall, sorry, in the mall. Dartmouth is on Baker Drive. So that's a bit of a new community. Sheet Harbour is in Sheet Harbour. Guysborough as well as in town. Truro. Truro is a little bit up on the hill, so that's not quite in the center of the village or town. Amherst is pretty much in town. Stellarton is a little bit on the outside, but fairly close. Antigonish is in town. Port Hawkesbury is in town. Bedeck is in town, and Sydney is in town.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks, I appreciate that. As you move forward towards 2020, and particularly in the case of the Halifax Access Nova Scotia office, will you be, is there a process of actually discussing with municipalities? Well, okay, I'm going to back myself up. As you look at siting, are there ongoing conversations with municipalities across the province in terms of co-locating services? One thing I've heard about from, for example, the Acadian Federation, how great it would be to have a Service Nova Scotia, Service Canada, and municipal services co-located where people would know that, for example, they could get French language services. Are those the kind of conversations that you are even able to have? Is there that intentional sort of collaborative relationship?
Thank you very much for the question, and Mr. Chair. In fact, I'm co-chair of the National Service Collaboration Table with my deputy colleagues across the country, and I co-chair with the Deputy Minister for Service Canada. So in fact, this is on our agenda, and Ms. Clarke is actually our secretariat for that particular table and discussion. And there is work around co-location. And it actually is being led by our deputy colleague, Alan Roy, out of New Brunswick. And so the conversation's happening at the federal level with our colleagues, as well as here in our province. And so we're actually building out information services for different levels of government to be able to understand where everyone's located, and might there be opportunities as we come up with lease opportunities or change of a footprint or what have you. So it's definitely on the minds of all of us in the service business and how we can possibly do that. And in fact, we are looking as well in Shelburne. I think that they're building out a new municipal office, and we've had conversations with the municipality down there around how we might be able to partner up. So I would say yes, those conversations are happening, and it's about where you can find the opportunity, the low-hanging fruit to actually make it happen. And as well, Ms. Latham as well has had some conversations with our New Brunswick colleagues. So maybe if there's anything further to add, Ms. Latham.
Ms. Latham.
Thank you. Thank you for the question. I was just going to add, because you did mention the that it would give the ability to offer French services, and I did want to mention that we do have in some of our access centres dedicated bilingual resources who can certainly provide language services in French. And just recently, and Ms. Munro mentioned this in her opening remarks, we did give iPads to everybody in our centres as well for that very reason, so that we could actually use them for translation services, whether it's French or any other language, that our service reps can communicate with our clients in the language of their choice.
Okay, thank you. In 2016, my party, the Nova Scotia NDP, tabled legislation to remove indicators of sex, gender identity, and gender expression from Nova Scotia ID cards, including health cards and driver's licenses. And I'm just wondering, as we move forward with the new license infrastructure, will the redesign of the licenses allow for such a change to happen?
Ms. Munro.
Thank you for the question, and Mr. Chair. That is a conversation that is happening right across the country around our gender identification. And in fact, our Registrar of Vital Statistics, Ms. Dewey, is at the center of a lot of those conversations right across the country. And so consultation is happening at the federal level and with her counterparts across the country. And we also have just recently established a community of practice on identity, because not one department can solve this for all. We're kind of connecting as a community of practice with health, with the Department of Justice, with education, with transportation, infrastructure, and renewal, to ensure we're coordinated and we understand the dependencies around our programs and services when it comes to gender. And as well, we have had recently, and we'll continue to have ongoing consultation in this space with the LGBTQ plus community, because it's really important to hear the voices of the community as to what is best for them, and that's happening as well. And we'll also be looking for written feedback. So there's a consultation process that we want to make sure we get this right, and that has started. And so yes, we want to make sure we move in a coordinated fashion, and because this is a moving target right across the country, you don't want to move down a path where not all definitions have been understood, or we haven't heard from the community in a fulsome way. So yes, that definitely has to be a part of our agenda, and identity within the gender space is certainly a high priority, and one with our registrar is very, very heavily involved in across the country as well as here in the province.
And in terms of the actual new license plates, there's flexibility there to adjust what is on those driver's licenses. There's flexibility in the production and software and what all to allow a change to happen as you arrive at a decision.
So thank you for the question. And yes, our requirements would ensure that we have flexibility when it comes to that space. But I think it would be advantageous to have Ms. Clarke just elaborate a little bit further on the identity and that gender question when it comes to the digital space.
Ms. Clarke.
Yeah, so obviously digital identity and gender identity are priority topics. And with digital identity, really gender will be irrelevant in terms of that path. It's really about ensuring that we have the ability and policies in place to be able to identify who you are, enroll you, and make sure that we can validate who you are. And that's a lot of policy work. So in terms of technology and making those changes, I think that's really sort of the easy part. And what will be most important is making sure that we engage communities and engage citizens on this journey, so that everybody understands what's needed, but also that we're privacy respecting and we're respecting of everyone's requirements.
Thank you. Between April 1st, 2015 and February 23rd, 2017, Service Nova Scotia spent almost $1 million, $867,795 on temp services, more than any other department or agency in government. Can you explain why the department spent so much on temporary staffing?
Ms. Munro.
Yes, I can. The temporary services or the temporary help that was brought in helped to deliver some seasonal programs that we had, senior property rebate and heating assistance rebate program. And as well, there was a data project at the time that needed some help, and temp help was it. Certainly, I put an effort on understanding the needs for temp and then trying to reduce that. And we've done that through the threefold approach. And I'll pass it over to Ms. O'Neill to let you know where we are tracking. But we've done some cross-training so that people can step into some of the seasonal work. There's been some work on process improvement to help kind of be smarter as to how to process those programs. And third, there's practices around workforce management that we brought into place. So certainly I had a focus last summer to say, you know, let's look at this and see how we can do better. I think, you know, for our business and the fact that we do have seasonal programs and there's needs in operational business sometimes to bring into, you know, it'll never be zero, but I think we're much more in the realm of $70,000 to $80,000 for temp services as needed. And I would agree with you, it was an opportunity for us to look at to say, how did we do that? And been successful in that regard. Can I forward it over to Ms. O'Neill?
Ms. O'Neill.
Yeah, so I'd just like to elaborate on what Ms. Munro has said. And, you know, yes.
Ms. O'Neill, I might ask that you lower your mic a bit there just to make sure we can hear. Thank you.
Okay, sorry about that. So what we have in our estimate this year has been reduced to about $80,000, and that's really just for when we're short of staffing, that there is not any capacity within our current civil servants to provide that. You know, we have moved to greater use of summer students and seasonal workforce to make up for that use of temp agency staffing that we had. So I think that really is about it. We've pretty much eliminated the use of temp agencies. It's really for temporary replacement of a civil servant who's not able to be there with us and we can't get somebody in fast enough.
Thank you. Okay, thank you very much. I think my time is...
Thank you, your time has just expired. We'll move to the Liberal caucus and we're going with Mr. McKay.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Very good information you've been sharing with us, and I congratulate you on a job that's being well done as we go through this transformational stage of the services being provided by Service Nova Scotia. And, Ms. Munro, I think I understand that you were brought in as a CEO, to address service excellence within Service Nova Scotia. And could you expand on why this is important, and can you give us some examples, further examples of some of the initiatives that are underway?
Ms. Munro.
Thank you very much for the question, Mr. Chair. From a service perspective and service excellence perspective, I think that the mandate given to me at the time that I came in was that plus program modernization. So citizens and customer client expectations are only getting more and more. There's an expectation of service, and we are compared to your services when you go down the street for a glass of wine or a haircut, but service is service, and there is an opportunity there to deliver more for the citizens of this province. And so we really have set out on a, we call it our excellence journey, and that excellence journey takes into account innovation, engagement, and wellness. And for me, it's an absolute dream job to be able to come and work with the team that we have to move together on a collective journey and know where we're going. And so it's exciting. And we want to be demonstrating better value to the citizens of the province each and every day. What can we do tomorrow that was better than today? And that's where I can say the team has really made a mark. Examples of this, they live it through the commitment that we have rolled out, but I believe it's been in their hearts around being responsive, inclusive, fair, and respectful when they enter into an interaction with government. And we really are the service delivery arm of government. So we are front-facing, and we take it very strongly to build trust and confidence in the services that we provide. So an example of that and why it's important, I think it's expected and we need to move on, is the fact that we have adopted the national standard for serving 80% of our clients in 20 minutes or less. We started tracking this in August 2015, and we've made substantial inroads over the course of the last 2.5 years. We started, we track it on a weekly basis. We call it the green days when we have a green week. We know by access center where the schematic systems are in place, and there's days when it's yellows and there's days when it's red. But what encourages me and makes me so proud is that the staff are very excited to understand where they are in any given week. If it's red, it's red. What they're doing is having conversations about what can we do better, what happened, how can we prevent it going forward. It's about their dialogue within the access centers to say, how can we be better? And they know, and we treat them, and they are a professional service organization, and they take pride in that. So the tracking of their performances, they can actually celebrate their performance, and that's what Ms. Latham and team do. They celebrate the work that they're doing, and they also have a voice in that, and a voice in how do we get better and better and better. We've done road shows. We go out. I go out with Gillian every fall, and we sit down. We have town halls with all, and we get their feedback as to what we can do better. And we actually have a list of inventory of things that we can do to make things better for them and for clients. My mantra is happy employees, happy clients. And so we continue to knock off that list and things that are better for them and better for our clients. So from an engagement perspective, a continuous improvement perspective, it all is about outcomes for citizens and how we can do better on service. And the work that we've done has been cultural over the last 2.5 years, as well as some really practical things like introducing the iPads for Google Translate, like piloting welcome desks, we call, so people understand when they come in, someone's going to greet them, and do you have your proper paperwork, like the seasonal workforce, which we knew we had real bumps, and it was not a pleasant place to be when I came in, and Ms. Latham lived it as well. Those waiting rooms were full, and staff members were there overtime, late into the evening, on a Friday evening in the summer, and their personal plans were put aside. We are now in a place where we're actually able to manage our workflow that is not chaotic, and people are excited to come to work and deliver what they can deliver, but yet we clear our waiting rooms, and we are consistently meeting the 80 to 20 service standard, which is a national standard from the Institute of Citizen-Centered Services. So on that note, if I could just defer to Ms. Latham just to add on to that. This is a very passionate topic for us, and we are really engaging our team members to live it and breathe it through the client commitment.
Ms. Latham.
Thank you, and I would agree with Ms. Munro's comments. We get really excited being able to talk about some of the changes and enhancements that we've made. So certainly, huge reduction in wait times over the past 3 years. So going from 67% of the time serving clients in 20 minutes or less to 80% of the time the following year, and we're tracking it about 87% of the time serving clients in 20 minutes or less, and that's across all 13 access centres across the province. Other enhancements, for example, the name badges, which I think Ms. Munro talked about, our numbering system, little things like our numbering system when you come in and pick a number and decide what service you're there for. It can be confusing. We took some time to really look at that and say, how can we make this more plain language? How can we make it easy for clients to understand? We also now offer it in English and French, and I think was mentioned as well, you're prompted right off the bat on whether or not you want an accessible workstation. And we've followed that through in our processes and operationalized that so that if you do indeed say, yes, I do need an accessible workstation, then you will be served as such. Visible leadership is key, so ensuring our leaders are in the centres on a constant basis really drives the engagement of the employees, and at the end of the day, that is really the #1 driver of good client service. I could go on and on, but maybe I'll leave it at that. And put it back to you.
Oh, I thought you were going back to the questioner. Okay, we'll
Ms.
go with
Munro,
Ms.
did you have something you wanted to add on that? I could see that this is certainly a very passionate thing at Service Nova Scotia, on service delivery and excellence in service delivery. I'm very pleased to hear that. Very pleased because I agree with Mr. Houston that it's far more pleasant than going to the dentist. So if you wanted to expand, please do.
Ms. Munro.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I'd also like to add, our frontline customer service reps, they deliver the registry programs, and they've been trained on those programs. And they're not easy programs. But what we're also embarking on is service training, and to help our customer service reps feel confident in their service conversations. It has to go hand in hand. And we're looking to do that through online service training, observational coaching that happens when they're actually interacting on the front line. And so there's lots of supports around them to make them the best that they can be. And so that's key, and they need the tools to be able to do the job. And that's what Gillian and team, Ms. Latham and team are doing to ensure that we've got the right supports and the right training to help deliver that experience that we all want to. It's about raising the bar in service within our organization. Thank you.
Having trained frontline service staff for 25 years in a previous position, I recognize the importance of training and how if you don't train your staff, they're not going to be happy staff, they're not going to deliver, they're not going to give the customer experience that they want to provide and that the clients wish to receive. And I was wondering, do you track in any statistical manner, because I get hung up on statistics, it's just my thing, do you track in some manner that sort of response by your staff, how they feel about the culture you've created or that you've transformed there?
Ms. Munro.
Thank you for the question. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yes, we do. So the Public Service Commission issues their employee engagement survey every 2 years. In coming into the organization, I said that's not enough for us because we're in transformation mode and we need to hear from our employees regularly. So we've actually instituted an annual survey that it translates and we can compare to the Public Service Commission. So we actually hear from our team on a regular basis, so annually in that more formal way. I would say there's an ongoing floodgate into Gillian, Ms. Latham and her directors on feedback, but we also have something called Employee Insights, and they actually are surveyed as to what we can do better on our processes and opportunities to raise the bar for clients as well. So we all have an open door policy, and so they can come to me with anything and everything. And I am excited of the fact we have a blog. If they want to blog, they can blog. We're a very open and dynamic organization, and the more feedback we get, the better. And certainly our road shows, I call them road shows. It's when we go around and we talk to folks and we have these fireside chats, if you will. There's lots of good stuff that comes out of that. And I do it, once a year, and yes, I'll pop in on occasion if I'm in a community, but Ms. Latham and her team are there and present and ready to have feedback on an ongoing basis. And this is for broad Service Nova Scotia, just not the in-person services. We live that in all our divisions across the organization. So employee feedback, very, very important, and we listen. And I think that's been one of our keys, is that their voice is heard and we action their voice and they see that action. So they're trusting us and we work together collaboratively to make our workplace better and to deliver better services.
Thank you. Representing a constituency that is probably 1 foot in suburban HRM and 1 foot in the adjacent municipality of Chester, I hear from my constituents how pleased they are to hear of services not being on strictly on Peninsular Halifax, and certainly be they health services, be they Access Nova Scotia and so forth, and not wanting to, in any way to impinge on the access of Peninsular residents. I can certainly say from the growing communities along the South Shore that there's indeed a great enthusiasm and appreciation for the fact that we are putting services such as Access Nova Scotia, the new healthcare services that will be provided at Bayers Lake. These are good things, and you know, as long as we're working with our partners such as HRM and Halifax Transit to ensure that there is readily accessible service provided to the residents of the peninsula and the growing population as we see it moving out from Clayton Park and so forth towards Bayers Lake. Your work to address the rural populations is appreciated, and I guess where I'm going with this is, how do you track that as far as how you're balancing rural versus urbanized residents of the province?
Thank you very much for your question, member. Mr. Chair, I think it's important to understand our strategy as well as the physical footprint, but also the real desire to have convenience around our digital transactions and how we can give convenience so people are transacting in their homes or wherever they want to transact. So it's important to have the physical footprint. I'm from that space that I want our citizens to choose which channel they interact with us on, but our job is to build out digital services where they prefer to use them than going into the physical footprint. But those channels are available, and I'm very strong on being able to interact with all our citizens in whatever channel that they decide. Our job is to make all three efficient. Balancing rural and urban, I think collectively we've got the 13 access centres across the province, but on the go forward, our growth channel is digital, and we will continue to be in these communities that we are serving now, and hopefully have more accessibility through our digital work.
Thank you for that, and certainly I'm very pleased to hear that there's a greater move towards digital, and that will be the key. Obviously, we are working hard to improve up our game in rural Nova Scotia as far as access to internet and so forth, and our government's committed to that. On the technology side, and certainly I see spending on technology to be an investment, not a cost to government. It's going to improve service and streamline more efficient service. On the technology side of things, does Service Nova Scotia take a lead in this, or is it more of internal services department that would do it? And I'm thinking of such things as, I know some jurisdictions are introducing blockchain technology for various things such as land registries and so forth. Would it be at internal services that they would make those investigations as to adoption of technologies?
Thank you very much, member, for the question, and Mr. Chair. It's actually a real partnership. So we work with our technology experts in internal services. We as program owner and know our business and what is needed, and engaging with the users of the services and stakeholders and so forth. We're kind of like the front lead, but yes, those decisions around the best technology to solve the problems we have or to deliver the services that are identified through our discovery work, we go and work with our partners in ISD on that. So they would be the ones to say there's a solution that might work that includes blockchain. So obviously that's something that they're our experts. We would defer to their judgment as part of our partner on the technology side of any business decision or registry decision that we would have to make.
Okay. I'd like to move a little bit more maybe into red tape reduction, and I know my colleague from Clayton Park West has some questions there. Just like to ask, is part of the red tape reduction that your organization will be involved in going to include harmonizing of any of your requirements with other maritime or Atlantic provinces? Is there any harmonizing occurring?
Thank you for your question. We actually work very closely with regulatory and service effectiveness. That's the Fred Crooks business that's driving out and announced that our goal of $25 million in burden reduction this year. So we work very closely. And as a shop that has 40 plus pieces of legislation, there's an opportunity for us, and we're a big contributor to that. And we're very focused on red tape reduction. So regarding collaboration with our partner jurisdictions, our neighboring jurisdictions, we really let Mr. Crooks take the lead on that in our partnership, but we do identify and work closely with our neighboring jurisdictions to identify where that might make sense. And so at this, nothing comes off the top of my head that's been announced or we've talked. We just have ongoing conversations, whether it be in land registry or vital statistics. I know vital statistics is very much a community in that regard. But we haven't. If we find an opportunity, we'll definitely go down it because we want to collaborate with our neighbors.
Thank you for that. And Mr. Chair, I'd like to maybe pass to my colleague from Clayton Park West.
Ms. Costanzo, you just have 1 minute for the remaining in this round.
Anyway, you can start. I can start, and then we'll finish it when Suzanne gets on. My riding is actually a very good example of how many new businesses that we have here. We have a lot of entrepreneurs. It's really exciting to see how many new businesses are arriving. And I remember 20 years ago, my husband is also a business lawyer, and so he deals with a lot of businesses. And we always heard how red tape was such an obstacle for a lot of the new entrepreneurs, the new immigrants that are coming. And I'm hearing so little of it. And I'm very happy and excited. And I actually have a meeting with a group of my business leaders in my riding at the end of the month. And I want you maybe to give me some examples of what red tape. I know you're trying to reduce red tape, and it is obvious. You've done something. So give me some examples that I can bring up in the meeting, and also what do you have for the future for them. You don't mind.
Order, I'm sorry, there won't be time for that this round, but perhaps the next round they can answer that question. We'll move back to Mr. Houston of the PC Caucus. The second round will be for 10 minutes. Mr. Houston.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My colleague, Mr. Wilson, and I were listening to your reductions in wait times, and he was wondering if maybe you could move as a unit over to the Department of Health and reduce some wait times there as well. They could use your help there. But I was looking at you've talked a lot about the staff engagement and some of the things happening there, and I did notice in the package that the senior leadership score for engagement was like 100%, but the employee score was like 68. I wonder if you can kind of try to explain the spread between those two numbers. Ten minutes, yeah.
Ms. Munro, whenever you're ready.
Thank you for the question, member, and Mr. Chair. Yes, in looking out on the report, there's I guess the strategy or the approach that I took when I came in, knowing that we were on a transformational change agenda, was to get the leadership team in place and have the leadership team drive out the change required. And so when we talk about senior leadership, that's director level and above. And we have a really, we meet 3 times a year, and we talk about our challenges, what we need to do better, and strategically building out where we're going as part of our journey. And so I think there's been a lot of engagement with that team, and they've been given real accountability to drive out the change that's required. And I think it's a part of the process. I mean, overall, our scores are, we've seen 20-point gain, 15-point gain since last surveys. And I think it's about the parade analogy. People at the front of the parade might know more than the people at the back part of the parade, but the intent is to get through the entire organization and feel engaged. And I'm very confident with our work around continuous improvement and actually having employees, the frontline employees at the table telling us how we can improve things has engaged them in ways that just make me really, really proud. So yes, it's 68. I say that's only the start. If we did it again, I'm confident that we'd continue to see improvement. But I think it's just part of the journey. And so we have a very engaged leadership team, and they are accountable and excited to do their work. And in time, we're going to see that number come up. But coming from 61 to 71 points in an engagement score of employees that were 750 plus employees is a unprecedented jump in engagement. And so it is the work of the leaders that are driving that type of engagement across our organization.
Thank you for that. The leadership scores at 100, but the staff, I guess, when asked about the leadership, scored at 59. And that seemed to be kind of that's kind of, I'm picking that up from the lighthouse. Seen a lot of lighthouses these days, but in this particular one, it said that the staff scores the leadership at a 59. I just wonder if you can comment on that.
Yeah. So the questions on. Thank you, member, for your question, Mr. Chair. The questions under senior leadership. Our senior leadership in my department provides clear direction. Senior leadership in my department makes timely decisions. Essential information flows effectively from senior leadership to staff, and I have confidence in the senior leadership of my department. So again, that cohort is director level and above. And I would say that we are ongoing in helping communications. Communications has been probably the biggest area of opportunity, and we certainly have made some great strides, but staff were just telling us this is a yellow code. We call it yellow, meaning that we're not there yet. And it's not red, it's not like the wheels are falling off, but there's area of opportunity for improvement. So what we do as our team, we will engage our employees and say, how might we do better? And each of the divisions are responsible to build out their own individual engagement plans, and then we as the team make sure that their action. So from our perspective, we have made big gains from 2015. Actually, we were, in almost all of them, I can see 20-point gains from where we were in 2015. So for us, it's about continuous improvement. We're not there yet. We'll just continue to work at it.
Okay. No, that's fine. Thank you. I do want to go back to the RFID chips and the licenses. So we do have that capability, I guess, with the new license, but it's not being implemented yet. Is there a plan to implement it?
Thank you for your question. I would say we need the functionality available to us when we're ready to implement it. And I think it's part of the larger digital strategy and identity strategy that we'll have for government. At this point, I'm not aware of any direction to turn that on, if you will. So
it's pretty controversial, right?
Pardon?
It's controversial, isn't it? Like if I had a new license and it had this RFID chip in it, government would know where I was when I was there. You could track me, right? As long as my license was on my body, you could track me.
So if I could defer to my colleague, Ms. Clarke, to comment.
I think that's what that chip enables, right?
No, the intent of the chip is to essentially enable near-field communications so that you can use it as a tap. And essentially then what that would allow us to do with digital identity is that you would have not just a username and a password, but also something that you have. So a multiple factor way to be able to identify you. So the intent would never be for Big Brother to happen, for government to track where you are. Our role is about protecting the safety of citizens.
So the tap would be if I go to the NSLC and they want to see my ID, they don't even look at it, I just tap it?
Yeah, ideally, if you think about the world today, if I'm a 19-year-old woman and I present at the NSLC today, I have to show my driver's license with my photo, my address, and a number of other pieces of information about me to prove my age. In future, what it would allow us to do would be, you'd see my photo, you'd be able to validate that my face looks the same, and you would get a red check mark or a green check mark or a red X. So that cashier or that other individual wouldn't actually need to see as much information about me, which really has nothing to do with that transaction.
Okay, so it's maybe down the road, but no real plan as of yet. So in the end, I guess for the cannabis retail, we're going to still use the same ID systems that we do for NSLC. Has there been any talk of how we would manage ID for cannabis sales, I guess? Be part of the age verification, same as NSLC, would it? Right now when cannabis becomes legal. Ms. Munro.
Thank you for the question. I'm not aware or privy to those conversations, so I really can't answer specifically around NSLC and identity and the cannabis file, so I wouldn't feel comfortable speaking.
Okay. I was certain everything wasn't worked out on cannabis. I guess that's one other thing that's maybe not worked out. Just in the last little bit of time here, I did notice that there's quite a bit of money paid out to different computer companies, like Unisys, I guess, is one. Unisys Canada was paid $3.6 million last year. Is that for just computer upgrades, or what's happening there with those big bills for Unisys?
Thank you for the question. I'll defer to my colleague, Ms. Clarke, to answer that question.
Ms. Clarke, you just have 20 seconds.
Perfect. Unisys Canada has had some long-standing contracts with the government as a service provider. They provide a number of services for us, the largest service probably being our generic payment service, which is a digital payment platform. So this would be one component of a number of the services that they provide to us.
Okay, thank you. We will move to the NDP Caucus and the Honourable Dave Wilson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you for being here today. I want to continue on around the information held by these new cards and, of course, our licenses, and with the outsourcing or the contract going to a company outside the province. Where is that information held? Like, is it a company out of Ontario, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, who oversee the issuing of the license or creating the licenses themselves? Is that correct?
Ms. Munro?
Thank you. Yes, Jamulta has the processing centre in Burlington, Ontario, for the central issuance of the driver's license.
So any information that we, Nova Scotia's provided, Access Nova Scotia, does that information stay here, or does it go to Ontario? Is it stored in Ontario, or is it stored in Nova Scotia?
I'll ask my colleague, Paul Benoit, Mr. Benoit, to respond.
Mr. Benoit?
So obviously we have to send them data to have their ability to produce the card, so the data that's on the card. So they have strict rules that they have to abide by in terms of the timing of the use of the data and the destruction of the data. Things like once they receive the data to produce your card and put that data on your card, then there's policies around X number of days after the production of that card, that data has to be destroyed. So all of that information went through a process around privacy impact assessment and review by the Privacy Commissioner to ensure that all the proper standards around the collection and the destruction of that data happens within a timely manner.
So, but I would assume there's a server in Nova Scotia that would keep it on our system, I would assume, right? That so the use of the card. So you're saying that data is wiped out at a certain level or a certain time. Are they a Canadian company or are they international company? And the reason I ask that, I don't know if too many people are familiar with the Patriot Act, which was brought in some time ago, 2001, I think, and it's an act of Congress that gives wide sweeping authority for the U.S. government to look into information from companies in the U.S. And I know we talked about this a little bit around when Nova Scotia Health Authority was sending some of their pathology tests to Minnesota, I believe. Is any of that information, is the company that we have currently, is that an international company? Are there other pieces of legislation like Patriot Act outside our jurisdiction able to have input or see that information that is provided when we register for our licenses and other things? Ms. Munro.
Thank you for the question, Member. Mr. Chair, we've had to work obviously with our partner in internal services, which own, along with our privacy departments around use of data. And so we obviously worked with them to ensure the provider meets all the rules and regs around privacy, holding data within Canada, obviously, and the legislation. So we're confident that's the case because all other 3 jurisdictions need to follow the same rules at the federal level. So we're confident that that is the case. And if there's any further information that Mr. Benoit would like to share on.
Yeah, I'm comfortable with that, okay, as long as, to your knowledge, that information is staying in Canada. Okay, I'm good with that. I just want to turn a little bit. You mentioned some 40 pieces of legislation helps you provide your services and guides you on the work that you do. I believe Consumer Protection Act falls under your jurisdiction. Is that correct?
That's correct.
So I know there hasn't been a lot done to that piece of legislation. I think the last change was around cell phone bills and requirements to hopefully alleviate some of the outrageous prices that people were paying to get out of contracts and that. Has there ever been and I believe it was under the former government, but has there been any review on the need to look at improvements to the Consumer Protection Act for cell phone bills, for example, or do you think the changes at that time are meeting the needs of consumers here in the province?
Thank you, Member, for the question, Mr. Chair. I would say with each part of our legislative authority, it's incumbent upon the team to continually review. And so on the Consumer Protection Act, yes, there was something that was recently brought in, to make it better on these contracts and be able to have early cancellation, that kind of thing. And we do work closely as well with the Better Business Bureau, and so we are partners there, but I can assure you that the team continues to look at opportunities there. At this juncture, I don't have the information off the top of my head around if there's opportunity around consumer protection, but we engage with our stakeholders, we get feedback, and when there's opportunity to make enhancements, we certainly want to. At this point, I don't see any, or I don't recall any work happening in the Consumer Services Act at this point.
So recently, a lot of people know, I think my wife brought up to me about the pricing of bread in the province, and that you could apply to get a $25 gift card from Loblaws or something like that because of this price fixing scheme that was happening across the country, I believe. So is there any role in Nova Scotia and for this piece of legislation to protect consumers so that does not happen? These are billion-dollar companies that have taken advantage of Canadians. So yes, it might be on a more national level, a lot of the media attention, but so was cell phone bills, and we were able to do something provincially. So is there something we could do so that we wouldn't see that? I think the Consumer Protection Act in it states for the fair disclosure of costs of credit and for the protection of buyers of consumer goods in the province. So is there a role that we could play as a province to make sure that that doesn't happen again?
Thank you for the question, Member. I don't believe that there's a role, but I would ask maybe if I could take that question away and come back with a more in-depth response around that particular question. That would be that'd be helpful.
I'll be asking the caucus if I can ask that question in the legislature in a couple of weeks. So hopefully the minister will be prepared. But if you could provide me the answer, that'd be much better, because we're limited on the questions in the House. Just quickly want to talk a little bit. I know we talked about the facial recognition of the licenses and that. What's the policy and what? I know you have to take your glasses off now. What about headscarves or say a turban? Are you able to get your picture taken if you wear one of those symbols of religion in Nova Scotia now?
Ms. Munro.
Thank you, Member. Mr. Chair, if I could ask Mr. Benoit to respond to the question.
Mr. Benoit.
The only difference is associated with facial recognition, and how we take a picture is really around the glasses and the facial expression from a smiling perspective, not showing teeth. We continue to allow headdresses worn for religious reasons.
Okay. The hijab is one, and I don't know the answer to this. I assume they would have to show their face. What policy? I don't know if that's the case or not. What's the policy? And is there a? I mean, I know the Access Nova Scotia facility in Sackville. Is there another room that you would go into that would protect the privacy of that individual?
So we certainly make every effort to accommodate people that are comfortable in that environment, showing their face if that's their concern. However, the program also has a policy that allows somebody to make application to the registrar to do what we refer to as a ballot without photo in that circumstance as well.
Excellent. Thank you for that. Just going towards the, and maybe the gentleman from Sackville can answer the question, but the Access Nova Scotia facility in Sackville is well received in the community. When I first entered the legislature, we had to go to Portland Street or downtown Halifax, and the waits were long. How long is that, I believe they lease the property or lease the building. How long is that contract good for? Is it, when is it up for renewal?
Miss
We'll defer to Mr. Benoit.
Mr. Benoit, you have about 30 seconds.
And I'm actually going to defer to Ms. Latham.
Ms. Latham with 25.
And I will have to say that I will have to get back to you on that. I do believe it's in the next 3 or 4 years, but I am guessing a bit. I don't have that information at my fingertips.
And with that response, is that something that the minister has to approve, or just the approval process of that, so that the community knows that facility should be there for much more?
The facility itself being in Sackville, no question, that won't change. We're in Sackville and we intend to stay in Sackville. So it's just more logistics around we lease that building. So I thought you were asking when the lease was up.
Oh yeah, I was asking that too.
Okay, yeah. So I can get back to you on when but
Order?
Certainly it's...
I'm sorry, time has expired. We'll move to Ms. DiCostanzo.
Again, I'm just going to wrap up the same question. Is some examples of red tape that you have eliminated? I know our government has put in a target of 25 million reduction in red tape as well. And what have you done, and what you're hoping to do? Things that I can bring to the table to my business people. Thank you.
Ms. Munro.
Thank you for the question, Member and Mr. Chair. We actually have a target over the last 2 years of 20 red tape reduction initiatives, and we tracked 13 last year. We've completed 3-ish this year, with another 9 in process. And so with that tracking, I'd be happy to give you a list of what we've done. We're proud of the work. First, we're working on the online dealer services, and that would be for people in the auto industry. And our team member, Ms. Latham and Ms. Clarke, are very much involved in that. And so that would allow dealers to actually transact from their place of business and register their new sales. There's lots of detail there, and it really saves them a trip to the Access Centre, and that's a large volume perspective. As well, we've got in the Residential Tenancies Act, there's a requirement to deliver actually a printed document of the Act to a tenant. Well, now we've made it available through the regulations to give them the online address so that they actually can go and look online, and we don't have to print as many books. People certainly can still get the paper-based one. And as well, we recently, on the Alcohol and Gaming, Fuel and Tobacco Division, we instituted a red tape reduction where restaurants are able to serve 2 drinks without ordering food, and that's really it's a service for clients, but as well it's very helpful to business as well, and they've seen that as a driver of business for them. And as well, obviously the Registry Joint Stocks is going to be a real big contributor around providing better self-serve options for businesses incorporating and doing business in this province. And the other thing that's underway that is a pilot, but we hope to roll it out further, is residential hearings on the telephones versus having to come in person to access centres. So landlords and tenants can actually have their hearing and their dispute over the phone lines, and that has been going very well as a pilot. And we've been able to, that helps those folks that have accessibility issues, but as well landlords traveling all over the province. So it really is helpful both to tenants and to landlords, and that's been a burden reduction. And we actually track the burden reduction in dollars through the regulatory and service effectiveness tool that Mr. Crook's team has put in place, and it's great to be able to quantify what the reduction in reducing burden actually means to business, which is key. It's not about the numbers, it's about the actual dollar impact. So lots more, but a number of things. One, I'd like to make a slight correction to something that I said regarding our savings on the land registry consolidation. The savings for that initiative is actually tracking to $2 million. I think I was thinking of an annual ongoing savings and operating of $500,000, so I just wanted to correct the record. Thank you for your question.
Thank you so much.
Ms. Slonis-Croft.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Ms. Munro, you mentioned when you were talking about customer service, you said about you had welcoming desks in your centres now. And you mentioned the seasonal workforce. What do you do for the seasonal workforce at Access Nova Scotia?
Ms. Munro.
I would have thought it was an employment centre that would have.
Thank you for your question. So in our analysis of our workflow and our customer flow, it was just evident that, the big bubble happened between April and September of customer flow coming through our offices. And so we really were staffed for average transactions, our staffing levels. And so what we did, an innovative approach, and we actually looked at what DNR does. They bring in seasonal workforce to staff their parks. Mm-hmm. We looked at what we could do within the boundaries of our FTE and in the boundaries of our fiscal budget. What could we do to shore up and provide the resources that we need in our access center to actually manage that customer flow? Mm-hmm. So Ms. Latham and team are getting pretty good at this. There's lots of benefits, but we start the recruiting process in April, March to bring in seasonal workforce, and it's really a use of 10 FTE, 26 people that work between the April and September timeframe, and it's been very beneficial because we augment our frontline staff with people that really only want to work maybe that period of time, and people that are seasoned, but people are actually vying to come back, and so that they know that there's a seasonal workforce now within the Access Centre, and that just works fine for them on a personal basis. So it's actually an augmented workforce that comes in to support our front lines between April and September. So it's called the seasonal workforce just because it comes from April to September.
Okay, so this has nothing to do with the foreign workers program or anything like that. Okay.
It's simply our terminology, so yes, it could be confusing. We probably should look at that.
Okay, well, that's what first came to me because we have a lot of seasonal workers, especially in the forestry industry and, some farming work. In your transformation, I know it can always be challenging, and especially to your staff. So what have you done to help your staff? And I know you touched on it with another member here about morale, because you know you have brought your statistics up. So what did you do to improve that?
Thank you for the question, member and Mr. Chair. It's a real focus and key to a high-performing team is to have an engaged team. And I think coming from my background, it was really important to get and improve communications, internal communications, and get the right leadership team in place. So I think those were the first two things that we did. And then really we've engaged everybody in our journey, in our excellence journey, through work around continuous improvement. And as I talked earlier about, their voice is actually very much heard, and we have open door policy. So everybody feels like we're in the boat and we're rowing in the same direction. And it's important for me to have fun at work, and we bring fun into the workplace. And yes, we have an important job to do. We provide many, many services to citizens, but we spend an awful lot of time in our workplace. And so it's a combination of accountability, people contributing to make things better, being rewarded, and knowing that their voice is heard. And we have recognition programs that we've revamped that include not only service, but program modernization, diversity and inclusion, French language services. So there's lots of different ways to recognize, and it's not only the formal awards, it's the small pat on the back or a card to say thank you for a job well done, but it really comes down to leadership, communication, and the employees feeling like they really have a contribution to making our place of business better and our services better. And I'm really all about being proud of the work you do, and that's really coming along. And our team in the access centers are professional service individuals and committed to doing the best they can. So our job is to give them the tools that they need to do that.
So how about, what do you provide for people with disabilities? Like particularly, you know, people who are challenged literacy-wise, taking your driver's test, for example. You know, I've worked with students who their dream is to get their driver's license, but they can't take a written test because they just don't have those skills. What is done for those people?
Thank you very much for the question. And I'll actually let Mr. Benoit respond to your question.
Mr. Benoit, you have about 30 seconds.
Okay, so in those situations where they have those challenges, that the person would have the ability to book an appointment, and they would have the ability to have somebody translate the questions and answers to them. So they would verbally
oral test
the client.
Okay, so there would be like a test of signage, like being able to read the signs, though, because when you are in a vehicle, you need to be able to read the road signs, right? And they're mostly pictures or graphics, right?
Yes.
So would that be part of an exam for them, is reading the graphics?
Yes, same as everybody else. It would be the exact same test. It would be the rules of the road and the signs of the road.
Okay.
Thank you. Time for questions has expired. Ms. Munro, you can now provide closing comments.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. I'd just like to say on behalf of our team, thank you for your time and your interest, and we wish you a great day.
Thank you very much for being with us and answering our questions. We do have some committee business. We received correspondence from the Department of, actually from the Highway 104 Western Alignment Corporation, and that was with respect to speed limits. And are there any questions on that correspondence? Okay, hearing none. The next item we have on the agenda, the next few items, are items that we discussed at the subcommittee of this committee. And the first one I will go at here is the endorsement of Auditor General recommendations. So from time to time, the committee can choose to formally pass a motion to endorse the Auditor General's recommendations. We have made a practice of this in the past. However, I think it's important for the committee to make a conscious decision on this each time that it comes up. We're only looking at recommendations that have been accepted by departments. There is the odd time when a recommendation may be made that a department will not accept the recommendation, and they may explain why. So we're not talking about those instances, just instances where the departments have accepted recommendations. So we have come up with wording with the assistance of our legal counsel to pass these motions in the future as we choose to do so. And Mr. Gordon Wilson, perhaps you could put forward a motion for this motion so that we can use it in the future. Mr. Wilson.
Thank you, and I thank the committee and the legal staff for their indulgence in the conversation around it. So I'd like to make the motion that the following statement be adopted as a revised portion for endorsing the AG recommendations. I move that the Public Accounts Committee formally accept and endorse recommendations contained in the blank report of the Auditor General that have been accepted by the audited departments or agencies, and ask that these departments and agencies commit to and take responsibility for full and timely implementation of the recommendations accepted by these departments and agencies.
All those in favor of that motion? All those in favor? Mr. Houston, do you have a comment?
Well, I think we should fill in the blank. Are we actually endorsing something for the AG today? Or
not today, but we will use this format for the motion in the future when we do endorse. Okay. So it's just to approve the wording of the motion, so it's clear.
Okay.
All those in favor? Those opposed? Motion is passed. Our clerk will make note of that. We also discussed the procedure regarding Auditor General reports, and in the month of November, as we know, we had a number of reports where we had meetings with the Auditor General, some in camera, some in public. And so we discussed that at the subcommittee, and the aim was to tighten up our schedule so that we're not just meeting with the Auditor General, but actually meeting with the departments involved in those reports in as timely a way as we can. So we did come to the agreement at the subcommittee level that the Auditor General's office would table performance audits the day prior to a meeting of the Public Accounts Committee, and that our meeting to discuss that audit with the Auditor General would happen the next day on a Wednesday when we typically meet. So the subcommittee had agreed that might be the best way so that the information is tabled a day in advance. Members have a chance to review it, and then we can meet in public with the Auditor General the next day to ask any questions for clarification. Does the committee agree with the procedure as set out in that motion? All those in favor? Okay. So there is agreement by the committee. Our clerk will make note of that. And we have a similar situation. That is for when the Auditor General issues performance reports. After the performance report, sometimes months later, or maybe even a year or two later, there are follow-up reports with departments that show the progress that those departments have made. Of course, our second piece of business today was endorsing recommendations as a means for this committee to put its weight behind those recommendations. So the follow-up reports are an update from the Auditor General on how well departments are following up with those recommendations. Are they completing them? So same case here. The subcommittee decided it would be best to for the Auditor General to table the report on say a Tuesday prior to the meeting of public accounts, and then the following day on Wednesday we would meet with the Auditor General. Same process. All those in favor of that process, please signify by saying aye. Those opposed? And that there is agreement from committee members on that as well. So our clerk will make note of that. We have two other items here. The Canadian Audit and Accountability Foundation has offered training to the committee. The subcommittee has discussed this matter and agreed that no training would be scheduled at this point. However, our clerk is going to look into self-training options for each member here. There are a lot of online training options that members can pursue on their own, so that option will be given to you. But no training will be scheduled for the committee specifically at this time. Are members okay with that? All those in favor? Those opposed? And our clerk will make note of that decision that members are in favor of no training at this time. Meeting agendas. This is a matter that, in terms of ensuring members are aware of what is going to appear on the agenda in advance of the meeting, we are going to have further discussion of this at the subcommittee level, but for the time being, we're going to ensure that the agendas are for these meetings are distributed on the Monday of the week that we are meeting. So members have at least a couple of days to be aware of what's on the agenda. Our next meeting date is Valentine's Day, February 14th, next Wednesday, and we will be meeting with the Department of Environment. They will be our witness, and we'll be discussing the Northern Pulp Environmental Assessment. Is there any further business to come before the committee? Hearing none, this meeting is adjourned.